Hello, hello, hello. Hello, Julie Hilton. How are you? Good evening. Good evening, one and all. A few issues happening with I'm trying to work out if this live is going to keep dipping. Sorry, the light on my phone keeps dipping. How are we all? Let me just pull up this live on the screen. This is a weekly Rushes little special. I just thought we should have a little chinwag. We were going to have a chinwag about the Emmys. I was going to have a chat with you about the Emmys, but actually, hang on, let me just turn that down. We've got Hollywood's going to grind to a halt. Is Hollywood going to literally grind to a halt? Not only are we contending with what feels like an extraordinary sort of, I don't know. So we had the pandemic. Stuff was released in the pandemic, then it sort of ran out quite quickly. Then there was stuff that was in production, and then that sort of managed to get completed as the pandemic ended. And they've kind of almost got to the end of that. And then just at the point where we were kind of having to prepare for slim pickings still, we're going to have even slimmer pickings for longer. Because tonight, the Screen Actors Guild, or SAG-AFTRA, have declared that they're going to be going on strike. SAG-AFTRA are going on strike as from tomorrow. 160,000 members. This is a major deal. It's a major deal. Oh, does it say 9:30? Sorry, it should have said 9:15. This is a major deal because there's already a 70-day strong writers' strike in full effect. And of course, it doesn't take a genius to work out that, most of the content that you receive on streaming, on television, or on at the cinema, often has happened 2-3 years ago. Like Mission Impossible, the Dead Reckoning that we just saw. That will have been shot, 2-3 years ago, and so there's a huge lead in time before it kind of hits the screens. So it's not going to have an immediate effect, but already so many projects have ground to a halt just because of the Writers Guild strike, which, as I say, is at 70 days in. So now SAG-AFTRA going on strike too, with 160,000 actors, means that we have, for the first time since 1960, 63 years, for the first time, we have both writers and actors on strike. Now, the big story tonight, and it's a massive story really, is at the Oppenheimer premiere. And Oppenheimer is the movie about the astrophysicist who I don't know if he did split the atom, but he was, instrumental in creating the nuclear bomb, played by Cillian Murphy. The actors all turned up. They rescheduled the premiere slightly earlier, I think in anticipation of this potentially happening. Hi, Mum. Hi, Nanny Di. And I think that's the reasoning that they rescheduled the premiere tonight. They brought it a touch earlier because I think there was a knowledge and an awareness that negotiations had broken down in Hollywood between the Hollywood Actors Union and the organization AMPTP or AMPTP, the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. That basically, the negotiations had broken down, and it was felt that the strike was going to kick in. So they brought the premiere early. So all the actors piled in to the Odeon Lux in Leicester Square, this fabulously luxurious cinema in Leicester Square, and they did all their bits on the carpet, and before you knew it, they all walked out. They all went. Emily Blunt, Cillian, the lot of them. And in fact, they left Christopher Nolan, the director, was just left. What was his quote? It was very funny. Let me just find his quote. He was left in there on his own. Here we go. He said, "You've seen them here earlier on the red carpet." He announced to the cinema's audience. So they'd all turned up, and then they all fucked off in unison, in solidarity for the 160,000 other actors represented by their union. And Christopher Nolan said, "Unfortunately, they're off to write their picket signs for what we believe to be an imminent strike by SAG," because at the point that they walked off, it was about to be announced. It's been announced tonight. It's going to kick in officially as from tomorrow. And as Christopher Nolan said, he's a writer too, as much as a director. He's part of the Writers Guild of America. And so he said, joining my other guild, the Writers Guild, in the struggle for fair wages for working members of the unions, and we support them. Now, everyone's going to be clamoring, and I can already sense it already here. Oh, these are all rich actors, and oh, they don't need it. And this isn't about the rich actors. This is the thing that needs to be talked about. Lots of people just go, actors? Are you fucking joking? Why the fucking cast of Oppenheimer all fucking off and kind of going, nah, this isn't about their money. They understand and they acknowledge that they are superstars. What they're talking about is the 160,000 other actors who barely earn $26,000 a year. And I think 26,000 is it? Or someone correct me, 26 or $36,000 a year is the amount, the basic amount you need to earn before any kind of health insurance will kick in or anything like that. So they are literally striking in solidarity with their poorer, the vast majority of the poorer members of their union. So before we all start hearing stories, which I'm sure the Sun newspaper and the Daily Mail and all that lot will start going, oh, who do these rich people think? It's not about them. They're actually going, it's not about us. The problem is the actors that aren't as high earning are obviously going to take a hit, like anyone who strikes. If you strike, you remove the ability to earn, and by removing the awability to earn, it obviously hits those who hurt. Which is why in this breakdown, so we've had this incredibly symbolic moment tonight at this premiere where they all. I said to Naz, I said, imagine being there. Well, actually, you probably wouldn't have said. In fact, it would have been like a non-event, because you'd have just been like, oh, look, they're on the carpet, and you'd have been rushed past them. You'd have been sat in your chairs, and then you just wouldn't have seen them. It wouldn't have been like, oh, there they are, there, oh, and they've gone. They just wouldn't have been there. But I think it's important, and I think it's important to understand, why are they striking? Why are they coming out in solidarity with their acting colleagues? Well, let's just put it this way. The organisation that represents all of the studios and all the streamers have issued a statement that says this: a strike. So these are the studios. You think of Paramount and Disney and Netflix and Amazon Prime and all that lot. They said a strike is certainly not the outcome we hoped for, as studios cannot operate without the performers that bring our TV shows and films to life. The union of actors has regrettably chosen a path that will lead to financial hardship for countless thousands of people who depend on the industry. And that is right. That is right. Insofar as it is going to be the poorer paid who are trying to negotiate for a better basic level of treatment within the industry, who are going to suffer and struggle to begin with. But the reason I think it's important that we do hear and see all of these major A-listers coming out is that gives it profile, and it gives it sort of press pages, and it's kind of a shot across the bows of the streamers and the studios themselves. As I said, this is the first time since 1960 that both the writers and the actors have come out together. So as the industry, as Hollywood is grinding to a bit of a halt just with the writers' strike, it's going to grind to a complete halt within a month with the actor strike. Now, the only guild, or the only group of experts in Hollywood that have managed to actually negotiate and renegotiate their contracts or deal are directors. So directors you've got this curious situation where directors can go to work, but they won't have any actors and they won't have any scripts, which it doesn't take a genius to know that those are two of the primary ingredients to make a film or to make a drama. The major issues that the actors are sort of, banging the drum about is around this idea of something called residuals. Streaming companies, Netflixes, Amazon Primes, all that kind of stuff, they are negotiating harder deals with smaller actors and bigger actors. They're not negotiating residuals, which means that actors aren't being able to earn as much money from repeat runs and things like that. You may have wondered why Netflix and some of the streamers suddenly remove series from their library. So you've got it there for a minute and then, oof, it's suddenly gone. That's not just about them going, oh, maybe everyone's had enough of these shows. It's actually a strategy of them removing content so that it hasn't been available, or it isn't airing over a certain period of time, which means they then have to pay more residuals or repeat fees, essentially, to many of the performers, actors, directors, and what have you. So there's actually a financial incentive behind them pulling stuff off the streamers. So this is one of the things that the actors and the writers are pushing for. Both groups, writers and actors, are also pushing against the streamers and the studios regarding artificial intelligence. Writers, obviously, because AI can essentially, or can it, construct the nuts and bolts of storylines and then be handed over to writers. So, you know, creating storylines is obviously one part of the whole filmmaking process. So, of course, writers are like, well, hang on a minute. We can write the stories, we can write the briefs, we can write the synopses or the structures of a series. That's what we do. That's the first stage of a writer's job. But if AI can be used for just that part of it, then it has a huge impact. Streamers and, well, the streamers and the TV studios and all that kind of stuff, they're doing shorter runs of series. So that means that the writers' rooms, you know, this idea, I don't know if you remember back in the 70s, no, back in the 80s when Roseanne Barr, do you remember that series used to be on? Cheers. They'd have writers' rooms with lots of kind of comic writers all in there, wouldn't they? You'd see photographs of them all smoking cigarettes and kind of, right. And that's where most of the kind of comic writer, well, most writers emerge. That's their sort of, it's like repertory theatre for actors. It's where they cut their teeth and learn their trade and all that kind of stuff. Well, those writers' rooms are becoming smaller. Those writers' rooms are not only becoming smaller, but they're also being used for shorter periods of time because the streamers have got wise to commissioning shorter runs. So you'll get an 8-part series or a 6-part series. And they've also got wise to not doing more than 3 or 4 series, because once you get beyond a certain number of seasons, there are other kind of rules that kick in that you have to pay more money to the supporting actors and all this kind of malarkey. So a lot of this is around residuals. A lot of this isn't around, as will be promoted by the sort of right-wing press. This isn't about Tom Cruise wanting to be paid an extra 10 million. I mean, you know, we can talk about the discrepancy in fees. Absolutely, that's industry-wide. This is about the vast majority of actors who earn way, you know, such smaller amounts, who earn their living and make most of their living from either a part that they've secured in, say, a sitcom that has run for however long, or a part that they've got in a franchise, or a recurring role that they have in a franchise that's small but regular. You know, it's about them being able to sort of hold on to those residual earnings and be able to earn that money. And the AI side of things with actors is actually them trying to negotiate around this idea that studios are also becoming savvy to the idea that they can more affordably digitally create or digitally enhance actors from scratch or in part. You know, so, you know, you've got that whole other aspect where technology has kicked in too. This is one of those moments where, yeah, as you know, as I was saying earlier, you know, I think in 1960, I think the reason both writers and actors were on strike back then was about something not entirely dissimilar. It was about the financial payback they got from the deals that the studios were striking when they sold films to television. And so it is usually around sort of technical or technological innovation or shifts that these kind of moments happen. And we are at a bit of a kind of moment, a fork in the road, aren't we? Because of the streaming. Streaming has got an appetite. It's got so many slots. It's got a hunger for all this content. And what they're trying to do, the streamers, is make all this content, but make it in such bite-sizable chunks that they have the lowest financial commitment to the vast majority of people involved with making them, which removes the capacity for so many people who aren't the stars to, you know, essentially sort of exist within the system on short contracts, and with much lower fees. You know, they need these connective incomes. They need these connective moments in order to make it work. I mean, other little implications for the actors' strike, which is going to be a huge problem for the studios. Promotion of films goes out the window. I mean, the premiere walkout of Oppenheimer tonight is one small drop of that. I mean, it's interesting that it's happened just after the Barbie premiere, just after the Oppenheimer premiere. But actors who are observing the picket line will not do junket interviews. Junket interviews are when they sit in hotel rooms and all the TV stations go along and do all their interviews. You'll see them on Graham Norton. There won't be Graham Norton. Chat shows will dry up. Interviews will dry up. The promotional teams for all of the films that are scheduled for the rest of this year will be shitting themselves, because it's like, well, how the fuck do we promote the films without any of the actors and none of the writers? With the Writers Guild on strike, you won't get synopses for new shows written. You won't get press releases written that kind of articulate what the film is about and stuff like that. So it's that kind of, it's those other, and film festivals. I mean, Matthew Modine is at is it the Flead? I'm trying to work out which is which one is it? The Galway how do you pronounce it? Is it Flead? Flead? Um, Festival, he's already pulled out of that. So festivals will dry up. You won't be able to get people going to festivals. And the biggest impact, naturally, the biggest impact is that we're going to have a sudden dearth of content as so many films, so many studios, so many programs are shuttered and the doors are locked. You're going to have directors sitting in directors' chairs with no actors and no pieces of paper in their hand to direct anyone with. So it's a major, this is a major, major deal, you know, and this reaches through, look, here we go. The union said that the strike will mean, so SAG-AFTRA have said that the strike will mean that any Emmy campaigning by actors will immediately end. So, you know, when you are nominated for an Emmy, nominated for an Oscar, shortlisted for an Oscar, whatever, you go into a sort of promotional push for that film to win at that award ceremony. None of that's going to happen. All of the actors are going to down tools. There's going to be no cooperation. There's going to be none of that, pushing our product, pushing our project for you, Paramount. No, none of pushing that project for you, Netflix. And so you're going to have this curious situation where, well, rumor mill has it that they, you know, in many quarters in Hollywood, there's an idea that actually the streamers and the studios are quite happy to sit this out, certainly where the writers are concerned. And I wonder whether it's the sense and feeling that they are willing to sit this out, the studios, and make writers suffer, that has kind of instigated or made the actors' strike seem that much more urgent. So I think we're going to, you know, there's not a lot of genuinely interesting new film casting project news coming through. And I personally think that is a consequence of this, what I call a sort of bottleneck. It's like we've had a bubble in the pipe, which we had a sudden glut after the pandemic, which I think everyone probably thought that's a bit unusual because nothing was produced. But that was the kind of overhang from before the pandemic. And what we're in now is that air bubble of sort of scarce product because of the pandemic, and just at the point as everything was kind of getting off its kind of haunches and ready to fire again, you've got the writers' strike, and then you've got the double blow of this. So this is a major deal. I mean, how long this potentially lasts for? The language being used as well by the actors' union is pretty strong and fiery, and the pushback from the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers is also pretty strong, where they're sort of saying, we're shocked. We've offered you a lot. We've offered you the highest percentage increase in minimums for 35 years. We've offered you a 76% increase in high budget on-demand foreign residual. You know, they're pushing back saying, look, we've been more than reasonable. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do, guys? We're going to have to watch well, we won't be able to watch. In fact, the libraries on the streamers are going to start to be deleted because they won't want to pay any fucking residuals, other than the really old films. It's why things like Willow, you know, I mean, it failed on Disney Plus, but it's why it was pulled off quickly. Reese Roberts, it's also going to lead to an uptick in uptick in reality TV programming, spin the wheel, all that kind of shit, as that will be the main and only content that will be able to still be produced and made on the fly. Why? Because even, you know, think of the chat show hosts in America. All of their monologues, all of their links, all of their bridges into parts, they're all written by writers who are members of the Writers Guild. And then in terms of actors, you know, all of those other television shows that involve actors, they've gone. And so consequently, you're absolutely right. What will happen is there'll be a massive rush to the right for reality show. And the thing about reality TV, factual entertainment, controlled reality, all that is, in terms of, it's relatively cheap to make in terms of how much airtime you can fill. So, you know, I think we could be in for, Jordan, La La Land, we could be, there's certainly the suggestion, isn't there, out there, that some of the studios and some of the big streamers, well, the streamers are willing to sit this out and let writers go to the wall, which is just horrendous. I mean, I think they'd rather sit it out and ride it out. They feel they can ride it out. So what's the answer? Well, this is a good question, Tiggy. I can't remember who negotiated them. I don't know if anyone here historically can remember. Hollywood needs a great big father figure, sounds ridiculous, or mother figure. For example, it needs someone like Bob Iger, the head of Disney, who's Disney Plus and studio is part of the problem, to kind of go, do you know what? Okay, I care about this industry, and that's what they need. They need someone like, in the old days, it would have been, I don't know, Sam Goldwyn or someone like that. They need someone who cares about the business. It might need to be people like Steven Spielberg, Scorsese, perhaps Bob Iger from Disney. I don't think the guy, what's his name at Warner Brothers, I don't think he's liked enough to be able to take hold of this himself. So I think, you know, someone, and it needs to be someone that the actors and writers can get on board with and sort of say, yeah, Mum, you're saying Scorsese. It needs someone like Scorsese. But Scorsese's in bed with Apple TV now. And The Irishman was with Netflix. You know, everyone's torn. But if it gets bad enough, you are going to need Scorsese, Spielberg, Bob Iger, to kind of reassure all of those creatives that, you know, there's someone in control. Jordan, Bob has made a statement saying he's worried. That's good. That's kind of good, though, isn't it? So Bob Iger, who's the head of Disney, has recently come back. It's just been announced that Bob Iger, who'd left and has been brought back because of whatever his face was making a fucking pig's ear of it. Bob Iger's come back. He's kind of liked as an exec in Hollywood. I mean, I think there's tolerant. Ron Howard is a good choice. Jar Britnett. But if Bob Iger says he's worried, that's kind of good because it means he'll want to do something about it. Iger called actors and writers not realistic in contract demands. Well, look, he is, as I said, he's part of the problem. But I do think he has a certain cachet and charm that could carry some of these, you know, some of these actors and writers over the mark. But it's going to require some pretty. I mean, here's the problem. The problem is that everyone thought it was a gold rush, wasn't it? Streaming was a gold rush. Disney Plus, Netflix, and choice. And then the pandemic kind of made that thought even stronger. Let's release all the movies just on streaming. And what's beginning to discovered is it's not actually the cash cow that everyone thought. What usually happens with innovative tech development like this, or tech creation though, is there's a sort of gold rush moment and then it dies all the way back and everyone then goes, it's over, it's the end, it's finished, it was rubbish. And then actually the proper growth starts. You get sort of like it's almost like a dead cat bounce before it's even started. So, you know, there was all this excitement about streaming. It feels like now everyone's saying it's like decimation and destruction, it's all over. No, that's not the case at all. I think streaming is the way forward. But I think it's going to come back down to a more realistic place. And in coming down to that realistic place, there just isn't as much money as they thought was going around. What are the other big fucking problems? And let's face this fact now with Bob Iger. And this is the issue at heart, is every single film that Disney makes costs $200 million to shoot and make, plus another $100 to $150 million to promote and push. They've created such a ludicrous high base level. So, for example, the Indiana Jones new film is never going to break even. And what needs to happen is they need to be making, so think about that. So even if, say, it was a huge hit and it made billions, once it gets through to streaming and the residuals and everything that all the writers and all these other, you know, cast members are worrying about where their income's coming from, you've only got one project. You've got it's not 90 minutes, is it? You've got 1 2-hour film for all those people to earn from. Take that budget, split it into something like 5 films, you've employed that much many more people, you've got that much more content for your streaming services, and then you've got that many more people potentially all getting their residuals from it, and your margin will be higher in terms of the money you make. I mean, obviously it depends on the project being good. This is why low budget horror films at the moment are all the rage in Hollywood. They're the only thing at the moment where, relative to the amount, like Megan, relative to the amount of money being put in, the amount of money they're getting back is massive. But streaming is the problem. Streaming is a real problem because the streaming beast is hoovering up so much content. So imagine Disney make 4 $250 million films a year, 4 films onto Disney Plus. That's why they're making shitloads of Star Wars and Marvel, and every time they do, it's getting shitter and shitter and shitter. And when it gets shitter and shitter and shitter, or like Willow, they then pull it off after 1 season or after it's been aired for 1 year, so they don't have to pay anyone any repeat fees. it's difficult. So when you talk about what is the solution, what is the solution? It's not only going to take a great figurehead. I think it will take more than one person. I think it's going to take a collective of creatives, filmic creatives. And then once you've got those creatives, I would suggest that Bob Iger, someone like Bob Iger needs to be there for the executives. And then I think you need Scorsese, Spielberg, who else could you find, you know, any other sort of director type like that. Script writers, screenwriters. You might need someone like James Gunn at DC, Warner Brothers. He might be a good bet. David Zaslav, the head of Warner Brothers, he's not, there's something about him that I think a lot of people don't like. But even once you've got that collective together, the economics of the streaming model has to be re-examined. And that is an ugly prospect. And I think that's why the streamers could well just dig their heels in and just say, we're going to wait this out until they all have to go back to work. It's going to be like with the teachers here. It's just like, no, we're just going to sit still until they all have to go back to work at some point, because otherwise they'll all lose their homes. It's big news. This is massive news. I mean, it could be over in a week. If they sort it in a week, it's great. But what I tell you what I do, well, you don't like this for anyone, because of course any of those crafts people are having to make a huge sacrifice. I think it's brilliant that these big names are sort of representing for those who are underrepresented. There was a wonderful quote earlier, let me see if I can find it, by Matt Damon. Matt Damon was talking, oh, here we go. Matt Damon said at an Oppenheimer press event, he said, there's money being made by these huge companies and it needs to be allocated in a way that takes care of those people who are on the margins of our industry. When you've got people like Matt Damon saying that, that is really important, and it's really, really symbolic. So yeah, how long this lasts for is anyone's guess. Here we go. This has just come in. The Writers Guild of America have just emailed all its members saying that the Hollywood studios have, quote, proven unwilling to meet the justifiable demands of actors and writers at the bargaining table. We therefore wholeheartedly support the Screen Actors Guild of America. The last time both our unions struck at the same time, actors and writers won landmark provisions that we all continue to benefit from today: residuals and pension and health funds. And Equity have just this evening announced that they are supporting the Screen Actors Guild of America action. Equity can't ask Equity members in the UK to strike in support, because that is a car passing our house. That is a car. Equity can't because of anti-trades union laws. Did you know that? So Equity would have called upon all Equity members, which would have meant that you'd have seen loads and loads of our actors going on. So yeah, huge implications for productions that are happening at Pinewood and Elstree and all these kind of places in the UK. So this is big. This is a big deal. If this lasts for a while, this is a huge deal. If this lasts for any period of time, it's basically so many projects right now have just gone like that. It's one of the main reasons James Gunn this week, and whatever you think of the Superman film, announced the casting so swiftly, was they needed to get the auditions done and the decisions made prior to what they knew was coming, which was this inevitable strike. So yeah, it's a big story. It's a big story, and it means that there's going to be even less film news. But there we go. Yeah. So share your thoughts below. I've got to go and pick up one of my daughters now. Stranger Things has been affected. Yeah, the new series of Severance has shuttered. These are the ones that have just happened because of the writer's strike. The Marvel films, Marvel Disney have had to kind of pause so many things, and they've got the added complication of having Jonathan Majors, one of their major stars, tied up in this domestic abuse lawsuit or prosecution in New York. So, but I think, yeah, I'm glad they're doing it, says MeTube. This is a tough time. So when you see those headlines which say, why are really, really wealthy actors protesting about getting more money, just know they're not doing it for them. They are taking advantage of their profile to do it for others. Just remember that, because it's too easy just to go, oh, look, posh, rich bastards, you know, and all that kind of stuff. There you go, guys. Share your thoughts below and keep chatting away, and let's keep across this story. As I say, was going to talk about the I was going to talk about the. Oh, hang on, I've just had a text saying I can leave a bit later. Was going to talk about the Emmys. It's interesting, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, if this runs for long enough, it could have a knock-on effect with the Oscars. You know, film festivals all around the world. The Venice Film Festival. You know, it could have a direct impact on all of these things. And it's interesting to know that when these sort of seemingly quite benign decisions, like, you know, you get that little, I don't know if you get those sort of news items going, all the shows coming off Netflix this week, London Film Festival, exactly, me too. Your premieres, junkets, interview. I mean, think of it like this. Empire magazine, for example, won't be able to carry any interviews for forthcoming films for however long, because none of the actors are going to contribute. None of, you know, then unless they've already done a sort of, you know, which they will have done for some films. I mean, in a weird way, it's interesting that this has happened right after Barbie and Oppenheimer, because they're the two remaining, or the two massive kind of summer releases, aren't they? So it always gets a bit quiet late summer. So it's kind of a safe-ish time to do it. But they kind of need to be able to make it hurt for the studios too, right? And you know, how can they do that? So, you know, even the copy of newspapers, magazines, you know, even things like, I mean, it's even had an effect on the weekly rushes, because there's just not that much news coming through, because there aren't as many projects that can be signed off, because they can't commit to this writer, that writer, and now they're not going to be able to commit to this or that actor and all that kind of stuff. Reese Roberts, cheers, Mark. All film and entertainment people are affected. Been talking to colleagues of mine all day today, expressing our thoughts and feelings. So being able to communicate is important. Absolutely, absolutely. And obviously, if there's any developments to this story, we'll be catching up on that too. And you know, there's still news coming through. I mean, the movie business isn't just Hollywood, is it? It's not just America. Incidentally, this doesn't affect Broadway. So if any of you are going to America and you're hoping to see a Broadway show, this doesn't include actors on Broadway at all. And in fact, if you're, I think if American actors who are members of the Screen Actors Guild of America, and they're filming something in the UK that's privy to equity rules, I think they have to observe the equity rules as a priority above the SAG-AFTRA. Though, in a weird way, I don't know if that's exactly as I've said it, because otherwise, why would they have all walked out of the premiere? I don't know. Anyway. Interesting stuff, unprecedented times, and it's another one of those ones of, you know, the was it David and Goliath? Is it David and Goliath? I mean, people will think that Goliath is all the actors, but Goliath is actually all of the studios. So interesting. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a good evening, and we'll see you in the morning for Coffee Moaning.